Hey everyone, and welcome to episode 15 of So Now You're a Teacher. I'm your host, Liesl McConchie, international expert in brain-based learning, author, teacher, and mother of three who is officially running out of sidewalk chalk. Hey, so we are talking this episode about attention. Our last episode was about attention in terms of quantity. How long can our children pay attention? And now we're jumping into quantity. How much can my child pay attention to at one time? And so in order to understand this one, we're going to get a closer look into one region of our brain. And it's this front region right here in the orange. We've talked about it a few different times. We're going to focus specifically on a function of the brain called working memory. Now, working memory it's basically like the workbench of your conscious mind. So whatever you're processing or working on in this very moment right now is being processed by your working memory. And your working memory has a capacity. It can't just input and hang on to everything all the time. So working memory processes specifically pictures and words. And it has a capacity of 1 to 4 items. That's it. Like working memory cannot hold more than 4 things, generally speaking, at a time. And it only holds it for about 30 seconds. And after 30 seconds, it's gone. This is why when someone gives you a phone number and you're trying to remember it, it's really, really difficult to remember all 7 digits of a phone number before you need to type it into your phone, right? This is why you turn to your partner or someone with you, hey, you remember the 378. Now, there's so much we could dissect about when you're actually able to remember the 7 numbers because there's different associations you have to those digits and things like that. We're not going to go into that right now. We're going to keep this simple for you. But it can only hold 4 things. Now, and let's just keep let's make something very, very clear. A process like long division, if you have an elementary school child and they're learning long division, that is not one thing. Learning how to do long division, like the algorithm for long division, is multiple steps and it's very complex. Like that in of itself, working memory, done, overloaded. There's so much going on there. Now, working memory, 1 to 4, that's a pretty wide range. What makes it down, what leads it to the one end of the spectrum, and how do we get it up to the 4? Well, working memory is lower in a few different circumstances. 1, students from poverty have a lower working memory capacity, generally speaking. Same thing for any student who has any kind of learning disability. They have a lower capacity of working memory. And as you might guess, surprise, surprise, stress compromises our working memory. And so many of us are having a really hard time to hold on to information so that we can process it and manipulate it because we're under a lot of stress right now. So 1 to 4 things, 4 on a great day. During a global pandemic, when you are employed, unemployed, laid off, trying to teach your children, try to keep them entertained and not touching anything outside of the world, it's not our best brain day, probably. We'll just keep it at that. So remember, once your 30-second time limit is up, and these are just ranges, right? Then that information heads into short-term memory, where sometimes it hangs out there for a day or 2 before maybe getting transferred to long-term memory. So this is step 1. This is stop number 1 right here in working memory. Now, why am I sharing all this with you? Well, because if you're the one who's really helping to design and facilitate the learning, here's our one-eyed brain, it's a little creepy. If you're the one designing the learning for your child, keep it simple. Keep it simple. Just really focus in on what are the main goals that you want your child to learn. And keep it really, really specific. In our home, we have let several things go. And there are some topics and some subjects that we're just really not focusing on right now because of priorities that we've made in our family and the needs of our own specific children. So get really specific with what is most important and just make sure that you really narrow in and keep it specific, those goals for your children, so that they don't get what's called an overloaded working memory. What we call that is we call that cognitive load. It's the technical term for when working memory gets overloaded. And there's a lot of different things that can cause that. And the circumstances that we're in right now is prime time circumstances for cognitive load. So, one, take a look at what we have with working memory. Keep your goals realistic, lower those expectations, and then maybe lower them again one small step, and then see what you can do from there. Now, the other side of this coin with working memory, real quickly, is that there's some really exciting new research out there about how working memory can grow, can be expanded. And there are specific exercises that you can do with your child, or they can do on their own on a computer, to help them expand their working memory. So just want to give you 90 seconds on this for those of you who are curious about how to build working memory capacity. Now, based on what we know so far in the research, because this is new, building working memory within the math world, so far as we know, only supports math capacity right now. So, but then you could also build it in a literary sense, and then that will support their literary skills. But doing math working memory exercises has yet to be shown to build their literary skills. Does that make sense? Like it's compartmentalized. So in the math world, where I tend to specialize mostly, there are lots of different ways. So with my children, what we do, because they're younger right now, is we do a lot of patterns. So we'll do like clapping patterns, and we'll do like pat, clap, pat, clap, and we'll do it together. And then we'll do like pat, clap, pat, clap. And because their working memory has to hold on to that sequence of pat, clap, it's actually like working memory is like a muscle. We're working it out. And we're just like lifting weights with our working memory so that it can strengthen and expand and grow. When with teenagers, what I tend to do a lot is a lot of mental math. So things like take the number of states in the United States, divide that number by 2, take the square root, subtract 7, blah, blah, blah. And then we'll just quickly run through these and see if they can manipulate all of those calculations and quickly move calculations in and out of their working memory. Even just doing sequences of numbers forwards and backwards. I do this all the time with my kids when we're driving in the car. I'll be like, all right, I'll say the number forwards, you say it backwards. 3, 2, 7. And then they say, what did I say? 7, 2, 3. Clearly my working memory is compromised. And so depending on how old your student is, like see how far you can go. Can they do a 5-digit number? If you say a 5-digit number, can they say it back to you? And then on the literary side, it's the same thing, but just with letters. So just say a string of letters and then have them say the string of letters back, doing things like start a story and then seeing if they can. It's like, one day I was at the park, and then the next person adds, oh, and a dog walked up to me. And then the next person has to start the story over from the beginning and then add the next part. So one day I was at the park, and a dog walked up to me, and then, like those add-on types of things. It really puts some healthy strain on working memory, and it can continue to grow and expand. Anyways, that's just a little extra for those of you who are curious about that. But for most of us, the main takeaway is this. Our children's attention capacity and our own has a limit in terms of quantity. It's managed by working memory. It can hold 1 to 4 things for up to 30 seconds. So let's be realistic in what our children are able to like work on and manipulate at any given time before that brain needs a break so that it can transfer it back to short-term memory, and then we can have a nice clean slate here to work on something else. I remember what we talked about last episode with time and how that all works. So that's it for today. A little bit on attention. Attention is limited by time and quantity. That's your quick, basic rundown on the neuroscience of attention. Until next time, everybody, take a deep breath. I'll see you soon.